Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. And this is Masons, Company of from the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry by Albert G. Mackey. Masons, Company of, one of the 91 livery companies of London, but not one of the 12 greater ones. The arms of the company are described in the language of heraldry as follows. Sable or black on a chevron between 3 towers, argent or silver, a pair of compasses, as represented in Stow's Survey of London, 1633, in the original grant of arms. This is quaintly described as follows. A feld of sables, a chevron cilia, graded 3 castellis of the same garnished WT doors and windows of the feld in the chevron, a compass of black. In some old books, as is pointed out by Brother Edward Conder, Jr., in the Whole Craft and Fellowship of Masonry, pages 91 through 97, the field as far back as 1677 has sometimes been described as azure or blue, but this is corrected by the quotation from the original grant of arms, which Brother Conder gives in full on pages 84 and 85 of his work. The motto is, "In the Lord is all our trust." These were granted by Clarencieux, King of Arms, in 1472, but they were not incorporated until Charles II gave them a charter in 1677. They are not to be confounded with the Fraternity of Freemasons, but originally there was some connection between the two. At their hall in Basinghall Street, Ashmole says that in 1682 he attended a meeting at which several persons were admitted into the Fellowship of Freemasons. See Ashmole, Elias, and accepted. The company has no authorized motto, but appears to have used since the early part of the 17th century, "In the Lord is all our trust," founded on an earlier one, in all probability that which is given on Curwen's tomb in St. Helen's Church. Brother Edward Conder, Jr., Holdcraft and Fellowship of Masonry, page 12. His reference to William Curwen's tombstone in Bishopsgate, London, is to the motto there of "God is our guide." Brother Conder also suggests the influence of the first verse of the Gospel according to St. John and of the first chapter of Genesis upon the Tudor Masons. As to the verse in St. John's Gospel, the earliest known seal of the Grand Lodge of Accepted Masons bears the first portion of this text. Brother Conder says further, page 12. We cannot overlook the fact that at first the company was known as the Fellowship of Masons, and it was to this fellowship that the grant of arms was made in 1472. But about 1530 it changed its title to the Company of Freemasons. This was about the time when the Masons' fraternities, which were connected with the religious houses, fell with them into a state of collapse by the action of the reformers. From this date, the company continued to use the title of Freemasons down to 1653, when the prefix "free" was dropped. From this date, the company is simply known as that of the Masons. This is curious, as the period embraced was the Dark Ages, so to speak, of symbolical masonry, which soon after 1653 showed signs of revival. No doubt about the same time, the speculative element, which had for so long taken refuge in the safe haven of the company, adventured on a new course. And possibly soon afterwards, several lodges were formed, still under the wing, so to speak, of the company, and holding their meetings at the Masons' Hall, which was still probably looked upon as the only headquarters of the craft in London. This esoteric portion finally left the company soon after Ashmole's visit in 1682. And it is to my mind an open question whether the Lodge of Antiquity in London, which has existed for over 200 years, does not owe its origin to the Masons' Hall Lodge. Inscription on an old brass memorial in the parish church at Lancaster, England, showing arms of the Masons' Company. Having headed this introduction, Masonry or Freemasonry, I cannot conclude without saying emphatically that, in my opinion, the Company of Masons of the City of London, in its early days, practiced and was acquainted with all the traditions and moral teachings of the fraternity, and that when the monastic guilds fell into chaos, the London Company of Masons preserved the ancient traditions of the guild, and amongst its documents a copy of those manuscripts, traditions with the object of keeping the old order of things alive, and thus assisted in handing them down to the 17th century Society of Free and Accepted Masons, which revived the old order sometime between 1680 and 1700. Sir Francis Palgrave, writing in the Edinburgh Review in 1839, maintains that The connection between the operative Masons and a convivial society of good fellows, who in the reign of Queen Anne met at the Goose and Gridiron in St. Paul, his churchyard, appears to have been finally dissolved about the beginning of the 18th century. From an inventory of the contents of the chest of the Worshipful Company of Masons and Citizens of London, it appears not long since to have contained a book wrote on parchment and bound or stitched in parchment, containing 113 annals of the antiquity, rise and progress of the art and mystery of Masonry. But this document is not now to be found. But here I leave it. The one thing certain is that up to about 1700, the company and the society were hand in hand. But after that date, the connection appears to have ended, and there is nothing to show that speculative Masonry had a place in the thoughts of the members of the company. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.